Hey guys, welcome to DIY Crafts. In this video, I am going to show you a step-by-step pattern of making this cute amigurumi pink soldiers from the Squid Game. This is worked in two pieces, that is the base of the doll and a hoodie, and later joined them to bring the look. So let's get started. For this project, we have to use black and pink color. But for recording purpose, I am using cream color instead of black, so the stitches will be more clear. So let's begin with this cream color. This is a 4-ply cotton yarn and I am using a crochet hook of size 3 mm. Now let's begin with the magic ring. Now make chain 1. Do not count this chain 1 as a stitch. Now make 6 single crochet stitches into the ring. This is our first row. That is the first single stitch, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the 6th one. Now pull the tail end tightly to close the magic ring, and this completes our first row. We have 6 single stitches in first row. Now insert the hook into the top stitch. That's the first one. Drop a loop and make a single stitch. Now into the same stitch, make another single stitch. So these two stitches together we call it as single stitch increase. Now put a stitch marker into the first stitch that we have made for the second row. So this stitch marker is to point the beginning of our second row. Now make a single crochet increase in the next stitch. That is 2 single crochet stitches into the same stitch. Make a single crochet increases in each and every stitch throughout the row until you reach the starting point. Now we have reached the end of the second row. Make the last increase and this completes the second row. We will have 12 stitches. Now remove the stitch marker and make 1 single crochet stitch into the next stitch. This points the beginning of our third row. So to indicate that, put the stitch marker into the first stitch. Now we have done 1 single stitch and then now make 1 increase. So the pattern will be 1 single stitch and 1 increase. So in the next stitch we are going to make 1 single crochet, and in the next stitch we have to make 1 single crochet increase, that is 2 single crochet stitches into the same stitch. Continue this pattern of 1 single stitch and 1 increase throughout the row. Make the last increase and this completes the third row. We'll have 18 stitches by the end of the third one. Remove the stitch marker and make 1 single crochet stitch and put the stitch marker back in place. So this is the beginning of the 4th row. We have already made 1 single crochet. Now in the next stitch, make the 2nd single crochet. So these 2 stitches, then make 1 single crochet increase. Again make 1 single crochet and the 2nd single crochet in the next stitch. Now an increase. So continue this pattern of 2 single crochet and an increase throughout the row until you reach the starting point. Make the last increase in the last stitch and this completes the 4th row. So by the end of the 4th row we will have 24 stitches. Remove the stitch marker. Now make one single crochet. Put the stitch marker back in place to mark the beginning of 5th row. That is one single crochet, 2 and 3. After 3 single crochet stitches, we have to make an increase. Again 3 single crochet stitches, that is 1, 2, 3 and then an increase. Continue this pattern of 3 single crochet and an increase throughout the row until you reach the starting point. Now make the last increase for the 5th row. So by the end of the 5th row, we will have 30 stitches. Remove the stitch marker. Make one single crochet and put the stitch marker back in place to mark the beginning of the 6th row. We have already done one single crochet, so make the next 3 single crochet stitches. That's the 2nd one, 3rd and 4th. Now make an increase. That is 2 single crochet stitches into the same stitch. Again 4 single crochet stitches. That is the first one, 2, 3 and 4. Now make an increase. Continue this pattern of 4 single crochet stitches and an increase throughout the row until you reach the starting point. Now make the last increase and this completes the 6th row. So by the end of the 6th row, we will have 36 stitches. Remove your stitch marker and this forms the base of our head. Make one single crochet stitch and put the stitch marker into that stitch to mark the beginning of the 7th row. Continue to make one single stitch throughout the row for rows 7 to row 10. So after making 10 rows, this is how the doll looks like. Now let's continue to make the 11th row. So for this, remove the stitch marker. Make one single crochet stitch. Put the stitch marker back in place to mark the beginning of 11th row. One single stitch is already made. So make the next 3 single crochet stitches. That's the 2nd one, 3rd and the 4th one. Now we have to make one invisible decrease. That is, we have to join the next 2 single crochet stitches. For this, insert the needle into the front loops of the next 2 stitches. Drop a loop and now make a single stitch. This we call it as an invisible decrease. Now make 4 single crochet stitches. That's 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now make another invisible decrease. So the pattern continues of 4 single crochet stitches, a decrease, 4 single stitches and a decrease throughout the row until you reach the starting point. Now we have come to the end of the 11th row. Make the last invisible decrease and by the end of the 11th row we will have 30 stitches. take out the stitch marker, make one single stitch and put the stitch marker back in place. This is the beginning of our 12th row. Make the second stitch and now the third single stitch. Now make an invisible decrease. Again 3 single crochet stitches, that's 1, 2 and 3. Make another invisible decrease. So continue this pattern of 3 single crochet stitches and 1 invisible decrease throughout the row until you reach the starting point. Make the last invisible decrease, and by the end of the 12th row we will have 24 stitches. Remove the stitch marker, make one single crochet stitch and put the stitch marker back in place to mark the beginning of 13th row. Make another single crochet in the next stitch. Now make one invisible decrease. Again 2 single crochet stitches, that's first and the second one, and then an invisible decrease. So continue this pattern of 2 single crochet and 1 invisible decrease throughout the row until you reach the starting point. Now make the last decrease, and this completes our row 13. By the end of this row we will have 18 stitches. You can see the shape of the head is slightly turning out to be round. So take out the stitch marker, make one single stitch, put the stitch marker back in place to mark the beginning of 14th row. Then make an invisible decrease, one single stitch, one decrease. Continue this pattern of one single stitch and one decrease throughout the row until you reach the starting point. Make the last decrease, and this completes our row 14. So by the end of 14th row we will have 12 stitches. Stop it here and stuff the head with fiber fill. Add stuffing in batches. Make sure you stuff the toy with enough stuffing to hold the good shape. At the same time, do not overstuff, and that may ruin the shape of the toy. You can now see the shape of the head. It is nice and spherical. Now let's continue with the pattern. Now we have to make row 15. For this, remove the stitch marker and make one single crochet into the first stitch. That's the first single crochet stitch in our 15th row. Now put the stitch marker. Now make one single crochet stitch in each and every stitch until you reach the starting point. Now make the last single stitch of the 15th row, and now we have to change the color. Change it as shown. Now remove the stitch marker and let's start making row 16. Make one single stitch, and this is the beginning of the 16th row. Now make one single stitch in each and every stitch. Continue this pattern for row 17 as well. So after completing the 16th row, remove the stitch marker and make one single stitch. Put the stitch marker to mark 17th row, and now trim this cream color thread. Now tuck in this tail ends into the die. Now continue to make the 17th row, that is one single stitch in each and every stitch. So for row 15, 16 and 17, we will have 12 stitches in each row. Make the last single stitch for 17th row. We have 12 stitches. Now remove the stitch marker and let's start making row 18. For this, make one single crochet stitch. Put the stitch marker to mark the beginning of 18th row. And now in the next stitch, make one increase. That is 2 single crochet stitches into the same stitch. Now again one single stitch and one increase. Continue this pattern of one single stitch and one increase throughout the row until you reach the starting point. Now we have reached the end. Make one increase, and this completes 18th row. We will have a total of 18 stitches. Now take a small amount of fiber fill and stuff the neck. This is how our doll looks like after completing 18 rows. Now let's continue with the pattern. Begin to do the 19th row. So remove the stitch marker. Adjust the thread and make one single stitch in the next stitch. Now put the stitch marker back in place to mark the beginning of 19th row, and then make another single stitch in the next stitch. That is 2 single crochet stitches, and then make an increase. Again 2 single crochet, that's 1 and 2, then make one increase. Continue this pattern of 2 single crochet stitches and one increase throughout the row until you reach the starting point. Now we have reached this point. make the last increase, and this completes row 19. We will have 24 stitches by the end of this row. Remove the stitch marker and let's start making row 20. Make one single stitch and put the stitch marker back in place. Then make another 2 single crochet. That's the second one. And now make the third one. Then make one increase. Again, make 3 single crochet stitches. That's 1, 2 and 3. So 3 single stitches and 1 increase throughout the row until you reach the starting point. Make the last increase and this completes your row 20. By the end of this row, we will have 30 stitches. Now remove the stitch marker and let's start making row 14. Make one single stitch and mark the beginning of 21st row. Then make another 3 single stitches. That's the second one, third and the fourth one. Now make one increase. Again, make 4 single crochet stitches. That's the first one, 2, 3 and 4. Now make one increase. Continue this pattern of 4 single crochet stitches and 1 increase throughout the row. Now make the last increase and this completes your 21st row with 36 stitches. Now we have to do the partition for hands. For this, remove the stitch marker, skip the next 6 stitches, and now in the 7th stitch we are going to work our single crochet, making sure that we have left only 6, 4, 5, 6. So in the 7th stitch, make a single stitch and now mark the beginning of the row 22. So this skipped 6 stitches forms the first arm of the doll. Now make another 11 single crochet. That's the second one, third, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and the 11th one. Finally 12th. So after making 12 stitches, skip the next 6 single stitches, 3, 4, 5, 6, and in the 7th stitch continue to make single stitch. That's the second half of the 22nd row. This is the second arm. That's the first one, and this one is the second arm. Here is where we will work the hands of our doll. So one that counts to be second single stitch, third, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. This completes the 22nd row. So in row 22 we will have 24 single stitches after leaving 12 stitches for both the arms. Now remove the stitch marker and continue to make one single crochet stitch in each and every stitch for row 23 to 26. It's just one single crochet stitch in each and every stitch. This row 22 to 26 forms the body of the doll. Make the last single stitch of row 26 and this forms the body of the doll. We will have 24 stitches in each and every row from 22 to 26. Now we have to stuff the toy. So take the fiber fill and put it inside the toy. Do not overstuff. Just put it enough stuffing to hold the good shape. Now let's continue with the pattern. Now we have to do the partition for legs. For this, remove the stitch marker and count 6 stitches from the start. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Now put the stitch marker into this 6th stitch. Do not close. Now from here, count the 12 stitches from the second point. That is 12. So now close the stitch marker into the 13th stitch. So here we have made 2 equal partitions from 24 stitches. The first 6 and the last 6 stitches for first leg and the remaining 12 stitches for the second leg. Now let's start making row 27. For this, make one single stitch. Make the next 5 single stitches. That's the second one, third, fourth, fifth and the 6th one. That is at the place where we have the stitch marker. Now after making the 6 single stitches, turn your work as shown and now insert the hook into the next stitch where we have the stitch marker. That's the 7th single stitch. Now remove the stitch marker from there. This is the partition we have made for legs. 8th one, 9, 10, 11 and 12. This completes row 27. You can take the help of a stitch marker to count the rows from 28 to 35, or if not, you can keep on crocheting until you complete the row 35. That's the beginning of row 28. So make one single stitch in each of the stitches until you complete row 35, and in each row we will have 12 stitches. We will have a color change for row 35, so stop your work after completing row 34. So after completing the 34th row, change the color to cream as shown, and this color should be the same which we have used for the head. Usually we have to do it with black, and in this video I am showing it with cream color, and this black color represents the shoes of our soldiers. Now let's make the 35th row with one single stitch with this cream color. just one single stitch in each and every stitch until you reach the starting point. After completing row 36, we have to stuff the legs. Stuff the legs with fiber fill in batches. Make sure you stuff it enough to hold a good shape of the legs. Now let's continue to make the last row, and this row will help us to close the leg. For this, make invisible decreases in the next stitches. Make the total of 6 invisible decreases. That's the first one. If needed, you can use a stitch marker again. Make the remaining 5 decreases, and this completes the row 37. After completing it, make chain 1 and fasten off the excess thread by leaving a little bit longer tail, and this we have used to sew the ends. Remove the stitch marker, and now with the help of a needle, sew in the ends, and this completes the first leg. Now with the help of a tapestry needle, take the tail end into the needle, and now close the leg as shown. After closing all the 6 stitches together, make a final knot, and now insert the needle through the leg and cut off the excess thread. You can now see how our doll looks like. Now repeat the same pattern for the second leg as well. Now let's start making arms. For this we are going to use the 6 stitches that we have left at the row 22. 6 on either side. So taking the pink yarn and attach it to one of the stitches as shown. So along with the 6 stitches, make use of the 2 stitches that we have made in row 22. That makes a total of 8 stitches for each hand. Make one single stitch in each of the next stitches. Let us call it as row 38 as a beginning of a hand. So for row 38, we will have 8 stitches. So after making 43 stitches, now we have to change the color. So change the color as shown, and let's start making row number 44. Make one single stitch in each of the next 8 stitches. After completing row 44, trim the excess threads and tuck them into the arm. And now take a very little amount of fiber fill and stuff into the hand. And while stuffing it, make sure you do not put the stuff near the shoulders. Take a very little stuff, just stuff it only to the forearm of the toy. Don't stuff near the shoulders. Now let's continue to make the 45th row. For this, make invisible decreases, and we will have 4 invisible decrease, that means 4 stitches in the last row. That's 1, 2, 3, and the 4th one. After this, make chain 1 and trim the excess thread by leaving a little long tail. Just like the leg, sew in the arm as well. Make the knot, run the thread through the arm and cut the excess thread. This completes the first hand of the toy. This is how the toy looks like. Now repeat the same pattern on the other side as well. This is how the base of the toy is done. Now let's make the hoodie part of it. Put this aside and grab the pink color yarn. Begin with the magic ring. Now the pattern for hoodie is similar to the pattern of head. Follow the pattern from row 1 to row 10 of the head. So after making 10 rows, this is how the hoodie part looks like. Now let's start making the 11th row. For this, remove the stitch marker, make 1 single crochet. Now put the stitch marker back in place to mark the beginning of the 11th row. Now make a total of 29 single stitches. That means a total of 30. We have already done 1, so continue to make 30 single stitches. That's the 30th stitch. Now chain 1 and turn your work. Now make row 12. That's the first single stitch. Second, third, and so on. Continue up to the stitch marker place. That is the beginning of our 11th row. We have reached the end. So take out the stitch marker and make the last single stitch into that stitch, and this completes your row 12. This hoodie part goes around the neck of the soldier. Now chain 1 and trim the excess thread by leaving a long tail end, and we are going to use this tail end to attach the hoodie part to the soldier. Now both the parts of our amigurumi toy are ready. And now let's start joining them together. Position the hoodie over the toy perfectly and then sew them together as shown. After attaching the hoodie to the base completely, secure the tail end with a knot, weave in and trim the excess thread. And now the hoodie part is done. Now let's add detailing to the toy. For this I am taking the black thread and now add the detail as shown. The belt part is done. Now let's make the V shape. For V shape, I am going to take only one strand of black thread. This completes the V shape as well. Now let's add the detailing to the head part. For this I am using the pink thread and I am creating the shape of a square. You can use either triangle or the circle as well. Now secure the thread with a knot, trim the excess threads and weave in the knot. This completes the Amigurumi pink soldiers from Squid Game. Now coming to the hood part, you can make it as opening way or you can sew it throughout the head part to make it non-movable. I hope you all enjoyed watching this tutorial. Do give it a try and let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Do not forget to follow me in the Instagram and Facebook page. Links are given in the description. See you all in the next video. Thank you for watching. Please like the video, share it and subscribe to DIY Crafts.